it's a very strange thing to go through and not have that normal, hey Claire, this is your baby girl, do their thing, but no one is kind of explaining to us what's just happened. Yeah. One who'd been with me during the day, and she just put her hand on me and she said, Claire, no one should have to go through what you've just gone through.
On this next episode of Beyond the Labour Ward, we're going to hear from Claire. And at the end of this video, you're going to ask yourself, how much emotional trauma can one family suffer? I'm not going to say anything else. Let's hear from Claire now. Thank you, Claire, for joining me today. It's really good, and I've really wanted to share your story for a long time. It's a really good story. It's going to be a bit messy at times, but we'll get through it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So let's start with your first pregnancy.
Yep.
Was it a planned pregnancy?
Yep, it sure was. Yep. I'd wanted kids for a while, and so had Ben, and I think luckily he went home to England and saw his cousins and kids and came home and said, it's time. And so, yep, we were very lucky. She was not falling pregnant, so as soon as we decided to, it was like, hey presto, we're pregnant.
You are very blessed.
You're very blessed with that. Yeah. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of our journey, and it was very uneventful, other than we moved areas, so we moved hospitals, and we kept under that midwifery section of the hospital, and the transition was easy, and I was working, and that was pretty straightforward.
And then the big day.
Yes.
So let's start. How did your labour start?
My labour started on the 10th of June,
right.
And I was having contractions, and I always use my little iPhone and snapshot them so I can kind of time them. It's my little way. I've done it with all the kids, and I was having enough of a contraction that by the evenings I wasn't sleeping at all.
Okay.
But I wasn't hitting kind of the parameters I knew that I needed to hit to kind of go in, and then I was taking a warm bath at 3 a.m. in the morning to try and settle things and stuff, and taking the Panadol and whatever I was allowed to do at the time. And then I think pretty much by the following day it was still going, and we were kind of, Ben had already completely decided to shut down on work because we didn't want to miss out on everything. So then the following day comes and kind of goes, and I went in because I kind of wasn't sure, being a first pregnancy, how things were meant to be going, and they kind of checked me over, said everything was okay, checked my dilation. I think I was 1 centimetre at the time, and then they did the sweep and kind of sent me back home. And
were you past your due date?
No.
Okay, right.
No.
Before the due date.
Yeah, before my due date. And then I kind of went, I think I was around 39 weeks from memory.
Sure.
And then after that, went home with our new kind of guidelines about what we had to hit. Again, had another night, no sleep. And then by that morning, I think I was quite concerned, more because of my level of fatigue. Wasn't so much, I could deal with I'm very quiet, I'm quite funny, I'm very loud and chatty in my normal self, but actually in pain I become quite introverted, quiet. And I just kind of got concerned about my level of fatigue. And then when we got to the end game after 2 nights of no sleep, so I kind of went back in again. The second time I went back in, they gave me a bit of morphine, and I got to kind of just hang out in a room, and then I was told that we would be induced, and that we'd get things rolling along. But then just before, we hadn't actually got gowned up or anything, we were still in our normal clothes and waiting to see this. I don't know if it was an obstetrician or a midwife. It was a gentleman. I can't actually recall. And then they came back in afterwards and said, actually, we've had a high-risk pregnancy coming in. Do you mind going home? So I kind of went, oh, okay, no worries if you think it's safe. And so we went home. And then that's when I think things really kind of kicked up a notch. I think I got home for about an hour, and then things kind of started being like, okay, I think it's time. and Ben drove me back. And by this time, my memory of it is I was so kind of feeling like the moment is now. I got him to park the car and I went up by myself, even though he was worried about doing that. I was like, I'll be fine. But by the time I got to the door, I remember I was almost having a bit of a panic attack. And I think that was probably the level of fatigue for me, just of not sleeping.
It
and
has like 2 days of no sleep.
And then the lady came out and gave me, the bag and settled me down, and that all went well. The rest of it was kind of, finally getting into the room in a gown, which didn't last very long because for my pain, I was just taking the gas. And then I was having showers because my back pain was what was causing me the most grief. So I was just standing under the shower the whole time. Then we eventually got to a point where I got onto the bed. And in between all this, in terms of the care, I had the midwife coming in intermittently, and she had a Doppler machine, like you would use when we were doing our things, and she would just, there was no scan, it was just to hear the heartbeat, and she'd say, all good, and wander off again. And I think then I kind of got to a point where we'd been there for what felt like a long time to me, and I kind of said to my mum, because unfortunately some of the time she'd come in, I'd be in a contraction, so I'd go quiet, and I couldn't vocalise. I'm a very quiet person in pain, and then I said to my mum, when she comes in next, can you ask her why she's not checked me downstairs, because I was feeling like it was...
You'd like to know what's going on.
I'd like to know what's going on. And we were pretty far along. I can't remember the exact dilation, but I think we were like 9, something like that. And then, it started to kind of get going, and we decided to try and get to the pushing point. And when we did get fully dilated and that started to kickstart, I just remember doing everything I possibly could. Ben was looking quite stressed, and he was coming down the other end to have a look, because was instructed by the midwife, like, come have a look. But he said, like, for the effort you were putting out and for what was happening, it didn't look right. He goes, like, I could see what you were doing, and she just wasn't making any gains. So then still have no monitoring on us at this point. So then they did a check with the Doppler, and I think that's when they realised, I think the heart rate had gone down to like 80. And that's when everything kind of, all systems go, press the emergency button. And they then tried to do, I forget the name, but the little electrode
on the baby's head.
So
it's called a fetal scalp electrode. It's like, instead of listening to the heartbeat through the Doppler, through the tummy, it's like a little ECG dot on the baby's head, and it picks up the heart rate electronically, and it's much more accurate.
Beautiful.
And then how long had you been pushing for, do you think, at this stage?
Gosh, I think
probably all blanked out.
It's a bit blanked out, but I think it had been well over an hour, if not hours. I think I was trying to. That's the bit I'm more hazy on in my memory bank of Emily. I remember more the after part.
Yes, of course.
But I remember feeling like it was a heck of a journey to get to that point. I feel like it might have been like 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock, kind of thing. And I think around the 7 it got that's PM. Everything started to escalate and unravel. So they basically checked on that electrode, and I don't think they were getting anything. And there was questions whether the machine wasn't working, or the machine didn't have paper in it, like all this background stuff. I found some of it out afterwards as well. But they tried several times, and then it was press the emergency button, and everyone turned up. And you're kind of looking around the room, not really knowing what's going on.
All the strange people there.
And who's who, and so we ended up having an obstetrician who I believe was a registrar, and I think he as well couldn't get readings and things, but the problem was he couldn't actually do a surgical kind of a forceps delivery, because she was already obviously down that canal. So they then had to wait for the other gentleman who turned up.
Consultant.
About 9 minutes later. and he just prepped me, and I think for the episiotomy, which was done, and they used, I can't remember the name of the forceps that they use at the point, but a specific type, and kind of Emily was then...
Helped out,
yeah. And that's when it really escalated. I have been next to my mum when she delivered my youngest sister when I was 16.
Right.
And Maggie indigested the meconium.
Meconium, yes.
So I have seen a baby come out with meconium, need a bit of suctioning, and she's a little bit blue. Emily was closer to like grey, blacky, like it was not a good look. Mum was with me, obviously Ben's still there. And then the whole team just grab her. I didn't even really know what, it didn't get the whole, this is a girl, that all that stuff's out the window for good reason, because they're obviously focusing, but it's a very strange thing to go through and not have that normal, hey Claire, this is your baby girl. And she was whipped off to a corner. She had about 5 people around her working on her. And I think we were just all in a bit of a surreal moment. I could see a lot of stress around me and in the room. Ben and I had just become parents. Mum had just become grandmother for, oh gosh, which baby was she? She was like, we're down the line, we're late, but and we were waiting. That moment was kind of not there, and I hadn't held my baby. So they're all doing what they're doing. I've just been cut and I'm getting stitched back up, and there was a lot of stuff going on, but I didn't really know what was wrong, but something was definitely very wrong. Then I think my understanding is they got her back enough to get her to a special care cot in there through a paediatrician who had come upstairs from downstairs, who essentially, in my mind, looking back, saved her life. And she got wheeled out of the room. But again, I've just given birth, that's all happened, and I'm just the bystander. So that was probably one of the hardest things with Emily's birth, was how removed you kind of are, and you understand everyone's got to do their thing, but no one is kind of explaining to us what's just happened. So eventually I just said, as soon as they walked out with him, I said, Ben, go with them. And he was torn. He's like, do I stay with you? Do I go with them? I said, no, you go with her. I said, I've got Mum, you go with her. So I didn't, because I didn't know where she was going. And we were already hearing transfers, because we weren't in the place that could properly care for whatever had resulted at that time. So Ben went and was with her down the corridor. I didn't really know where that was, and I was in the room with Mum. Mum and I proceeded to try and ask some questions in between. Again, people were still very stressed, and I've got to do my notes, and you're like, can we find out what's happened? So unfortunately we weren't really getting much again in terms of explanation, and then eventually another lady came in and kind of talked us through, and I remember her words to me was, she was a midwife who'd done the sweep on me previously, so not the one who'd been with me during the day, and she just put her hand on me and she said, Claire, no one should have to go through what you've just gone through. And that was
the first piece of truth was told to you.
And I was like, wow. So that was the first kind of like, it, but until someone articulates words, and then you go, what have I gone through? What is she going through? And you don't know. And so I just started going into survival mode of, I have a baby out there. I just had a baby. I need to get to that baby. So I pushed to have a shower. And so my mum and I got out, and, bear in mind, I've just been cut, stitched up, but my mum and I did the shower in the room by ourselves. And I think that was the first moment that, because I've been so, just talking to Mum, I looked around the room and I saw the blood. You do? Splattered around everywhere. And I kind of went, wow, this has just happened. And I went in the shower, and I don't remember too much of that. Got done, got dressed, and then I went out to the corridor, and I think I was wheelchaired out, and I said, like, I want to be with my baby. I was told that NETs were coming to collect her, and that she was being transferred to a hospital with a NICU. I think it's grade 3, is it?
Your baby needed an intensive care, and the hospital you delivered at had a basic special nursery to look after certain types of sick babies, but not the level that your baby needed.
So I think out of those hospitals, there's only about 3 or 4, and so there was only one that had availability to fit in. So we decided to go, that she was going there. I then went into the special care unit, and Ems was already in one of those cribs. Humidity cribs. And we were just watching her get wired up. And unbeknownst to me at the time, but Ben would have been there for it, and it's in the notes, Em actually did get intubated and wasn't breathing for herself, but funnily enough, at 30 minutes, started breathing on her own, because they said there was a leak around the tube, so they pulled it out. So she kind of did it on her own accord, and as I think by the time I got in there, that was already gone, and she was just getting wired up. Nets were beautiful. When Nets turned up, which I believe is a doctor and a nurse.
Correct.
Team.
They're specialists. All they do is help transfer babies. So the Nets, for those people who don't know, is the neonatal emergency transfer service. And they have, so because we only have a limited number of these neonatal intensive cares in our city, they specialise by going to the peripheral hospitals, like the hospital you delivered, stabilise the baby, and then move that baby to the neonatal intensive care. So that's what's happened.
Beautiful. And then at that point in time, they're explaining to me what has gone down. It was explained to me that Emily had gone without oxygen, and that she had a blood gas level of 6.69.
So that's terrible. So we do blood gases on babies that we are worried about when they come out, they're not too well. And the normal blood gas level is about 7.35. And anything less than sort of 7.1, 7.0, it's quite serious. So down into the 6s, we're in some trouble. So.
And then the other thing I've been told was the APGARs were, I think, at 2 minutes, Emily was scoring a 2. At 5 minutes, she was a 3. And at 10 minutes, she was a 5. So
the APGAR score is just a score to help people know whether they need to resuscitate a baby or not. And so clearly your baby needed help. So those were kind of all the medical things I was getting up to speed with. Nets were great in realising, because they were transferring over to their own humidity crib and doing their own. She started, I think at that point she went on to the cooling mat, which I explained. But the thing that I loved about them was they said, "Mum, have you held your baby?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, you probably won't get to for a while now. So Dad and Mum, do you want to sit here while we wire up on you?" And so that was beautiful, a nice moment, especially because at that stage I think everyone didn't know. So that was lovely, and I will always be very appreciative to them to acknowledge that in the thick of it, because I get we got to do what's going to keep it here, but equally we needed something at that time, and just to feel part of this process in her life, and like we were parents, and that was it, and it was really special. So we did that. And then she went in, and obviously I was told at the time I couldn't go, and that was just not in my nature. I was like, I am going where my baby goes. But they said because I was a patient and I'd had the stitches, I couldn't go in the ambulance, because that would be Nets taking 2 patients. So of course Benny goes, and again feels torn. He wants to be with baby, wants to be with me, but this is completely new. We've gone from being people who've never had a child to this reality, and not a normal reality. So he left, and at the time I was still trying to figure out exactly where they'd gone
and you know, where I would go. And I argued enough and I signed a form to get me out of the hospital. And I got my dad to drive me in his ute, because by this time my dad had come and met. Obviously Mum had been there the whole time and informing him. And I remember driving from one hospital to the other with the windows down, because I needed air, because I think I was probably in shock.
Of course.
And I eventually got up to the maternity ward. At this stage I still didn't know where the NICU was, and that I had to go down. I think there's passwords and everything from memory, and I was waiting for Ben to come up, because no one up there knew how to get me down. So I waited for Ben. He came up. He was just exhausted, and we switched out. And I went down and I met, I think it was a CNC called a lady, and I literally had a whole chat to her. And I remember going down there. I remember seeing him for my own peace of mind. I don't remember having this whole chat to this lady, which I'm only recounting because she saw me like a week later, and I had no recollection, and she knew everything, because I'd been my normal self and talking through things, and I was actually very stable and calm because it's still in that survival mode, but I had no recollection of all of this. And she kind of said, that's okay, this has happened before, like, and talked me through when she met me and how Em was, and etc. And the only other thing I remember doing on that particular night of delivery was I went upstairs, because it just said baby of Sayers, and I went upstairs to bed and I said, we need to name her, because at this stage I didn't know. So I wanted her to be named, and so we chose Emily, and we named her that night. And that was my job, to go downstairs and to get her name on there. And then we went and had some sleep and woke up the next day, and we did 29 days in.
And were you able to stay at the hospital? We
were. I think Emily was called the big girl, because almost every other kid on that ward was premies. And some of them very long stayers, as you know, and they were teeny tiny little things. Emmy was obviously full term. I think she was 39 plus 2 or 4, can't remember exactly. And she was a nice birth weight. And then there was also the swelling, that I thought she had this perfectly shaped head, but I've realised later a lot of that was the swelling. The initial assumption was to be cautiously optimistic.
That was the term you were told.
That was the term I was told. Because Emily was suckling and showing some kind of normal kind of reflexes that kind of made them think, okay, I think maybe we'll get out of the woods. But then seizures started, and they were pretty horrific. So we kind of lived through it, being they were so noisy, even like the way she would coo out, like everyone, even in a NICU environment, would turn and watch, and her pupils would fully dilate. And look, she's seizures at a newborn, I would say I found those more traumatic than ones I get later on, because it is very different to watch a newborn baby, and they were probably a bit harsher, and we had to bomb it with heaps of meds, which they already had, but I think they topped them up. Then we got to the 2-week mark, and we were doing our MRI, and we had still been told cautiously optimistic, even with some things, like we knew there was going to be something, but they did it, and the damage was pretty profound. It was the bulk of the frontal lobe and the pathways down both sides of the brain. So that was, pretty full on. So we do 29 days. My mum and dad were amazing. They were there with us. One of them was with us every day. I should probably note my sister was pregnant at the same time.
I know.
And was under you, and had her baby 8 days later. And the trauma that it has on your extended families is quite profound. So I think Ava was born. I can't say Ava's name.
You can say Ava's name.
And I think she had a lot of people constantly coming in, and it was like, "Hey, you've had a baby. How's Claire? How's Em? How's, it?" And she was equally, but I think, and Mum and Dad had to rotate their time between us, and I think Sarah's got almost like a survivor's guilt thing with.
It's often the case.
Yeah, how her pregnancy's gone and stuff like that, and I gutted for her. We're a very close family, and one of 4 girls, and I don't like that she feels like that. And Ava's beautiful and most gorgeous cousin for Emily, and Emily is the most gorgeous cousin for her.
Didn't there was a book written?
Yes, we did a little book. Sarah wrote it. Yeah. A story about 2 little bunnies called Emily and Ava's Adventures. Yeah. And she wrote it for their first birthday. And subsequently we got it published when we were fundraising in later years for Emily. It was beautiful. So
let's just summarise what's happened.
Yep.
In a word, you've had a labour that may not have gone the way normal labours go.
Yep.
And it sounds like Emily's heart rate was quite low for a long period of time, and she was suffering from hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen.
Ischemic encephalopathy. I can never say that.
Hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy is what Emily has suffered, unfortunately. And once they realised, they took some action pretty quickly, and under normal circumstances, having a forceps delivery with no pain relief is horrific. But when you're in this sort of survival mode where you realise you just got to get your baby out, you kind of just go with it because you just got to do what you got to do.
I don't recount pain other than the initial sleep deprivation before I even really got to hospital.
Yeah, it's just your incredible survival, process that you go through. So, Emily, just briefly tell us what life's like with Emily at the moment.
So Emily is honestly the most amazing human being I've ever met. She's it's terribly funny. You can cry because I'm proud more than I was sad. It's the thing about Em, profoundly affected, quadriplegic, peg-fed through the tummy, cortical vision impairment. People will call Emily non-verbal. I completely disagree. My girl's got great tone of voice. Yep. She can articulate in a sweet voice, a frustrated voice, a scared voice. It's actually quite phenomenal watching someone work out how to communicate with the world when they can't do it in the way that we would. Looks to the left for yes. Her vision is not like us, can't track as well as or as easily, but definitely can see, and it's the one thing that's kind of increased. She has uncontrolled epilepsy, but it's not nice, but we deal with it and she solves. She does have problems swallowing, so we have a suction machine and we have to do some pretty big interventions on a day-to-day basis. She requires 24-hour care, and for all that she goes through, she gives you the biggest damn smile every morning, even after you have to give her a big suction to clear her throat. Right. Wow. And she'll give you this beautiful sigh to say thank you and smile and just get on with her day. Wow. So she's the most regulated human I've ever met, and has this propensity to take the moments and enjoy them. And so she's our little teacher. We call her our sunshine. She'll warm your heart. I would never wish what Emily's gone through on anybody, but I would never not wish Emily to be here with all that she goes through. Yeah. She's
a valuable part of the family.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Okay. So my interactions with you started before I actually met you.
Yes.
When the paediatrician called me, told me your story, and she said to me, Peter, when Sarah comes, and when she called me and she said, now when Claire comes to you, you're going to do a cesarean. She didn't give me any choices, and well, it was great to meet you. We had a bit of a chat before you fell pregnant again. We kind of made a bit of a battle plan.
Yeah. And so therein began
the next journey.
Our next journey. And for all intensive purposes, again, I don't recall our pregnancy.
There's no drama during the pregnancy at all. I mean, we had lots of talks about Emily and counselling and just debriefing about all of that.
Yeah. And I think Ben was more anxious than I was. He grieved for about 2 years over Emily. Loved her. He got more kangaroo cuddles when we were in the NICU than I did, so their bond is profound. But he grieved who she could have been, and I think his anxiety was more over the next. I think I felt like Emily's... there was no way that could happen again.
There's no way.
There was no way that could happen again. And I felt under your care, having, you know, more that relationship, that person I could pick up the phone to, and someone who also was going to be vigilant, knowing what we've been through, that we were going to get out the other end of this and be like, wow, that was, you know, tick. Went the way it should have.
So we'd planned a Caesar. I think it was, but the week before... I think it was a Friday evening. Your waters broke.
And I kind of just turned up and said, hey guys, I was like, I think now is the time. And I think it was in the evening. It was, And I had the girls did the CTG monitoring. And the next thing I was told was, hey Claire, you're having the C-section. And I remember getting Ben to take a photo of me because I was so excited that we were going to have another baby. And we'd really, you know, we were so excited for us and for Emily as well. She was so ready to have a little brother. She like articulated it in the way she can. She was saying, brother, that's how she would say brother. We were teaching her. And then, we went into theatre.
And the caesarean section went very smoothly.
And we had cord blood being collected to help with Emily.
And Charlie was born.
And my dad quoted your words recently, actually. I think it was beautiful pregnancy, beautiful baby, beautiful boy, was what you said as he came out.
And he cried and he was happy and you had a cuddle.
And Ben... I have genuinely was like the most ecstatic human I had ever seen. He was just like, I remember him looking at me and I'm like dosed up, feeling groggy. My spinal block and jaw was making me not feel my arm and I was feeling a bit like dry mouthed. And he was like, look at him. And I remember going, okay, yes, no, he's beautiful, but I was just a bit, you know, in my place. And he put him on me. And I do remember the only thing I said, as beautiful as that cuddle was, because I was feeling I didn't know how much weight my arm was putting on him. And I remember saying to Ben, can you take him off? Because I'm not sure if I'm, you know, I just, you know, it's beautiful one. And I said, you just enjoy this moment. I'll get it in a second when I get my bearings back together.
My only regret of that whole situation there was that no one took a photo.
I know. And lesson learnt. And that would be beautiful.
Within 20 minutes, he just started having some breathing problems. And the midwife promptly took him up to the nursery at that hospital. And
I think our APGARs with him when he came out were like 9 and 9.
The best.
And I think I remember you and I again sent Ben off, being like, I was like, oh, he's just swallowed a little bit of meconium, they'll get that out and he'll be right as rain. And I think I had even with EMS, I was not anxious. I just thought, oh, it's just a little blip, we'll be good. And then...
You were talking in the recovery and then...
I was in the recovery for a while.
You were, and they asked if I could come up to help, and little did I know that Charlie died.
And I remember sitting there and I was in recovery and I was still itching from all my effects from the morphine, and I felt like it'd been a while, but again, because I was feeling so weird, I didn't know if that was just me in my zone. And I remember they wheeled me back to the maternity ward and they brought a doctor who randomly I had met at 32 weeks. They brought her up to me to tell me that Charlie wasn't doing so well. And I remember saying quite curtly at the time, then why am I here? Take me to my baby.
And that was when I realised what was happening, we needed to get you up there.
And then they brought me down and I saw Ben and my dad was there because I had no idea during I think probably an hour had gone past. I had no idea that Ben had called my dad and that things weren't going well. And when I got there, you were still working on him with 2 other medical practitioners, and Ben looked at me, and unfortunately, being parents of a child like Emily, we are very aware of what those numbers mean. And Ben just looked at me and he said, Claire, he's already gone. He's hit 0. They're just keeping him. And I remember saying to you, if it's just you guys, just stop.
Yeah.
I remember saying, I just want everything medical off him. Yeah. And I just want to hold him.
Yeah.
And I remember the weirdest thing I did, which at the time I still couldn't feel my nipples or my breasts or my arms. But I had this weird thing that's skin to skin. I might get that miracle.
Okay.
And I remember trying to put colostrum in his mouth because I just thought maybe love could bring it back. But it didn't, and he was gone. I remember the most beautiful midwife with Ben, and Ben has a propensity to be angry, you know, not in an aggressive way, just at situations, especially when it happens to your kids at a second. And it would take a very particular type of person like you for us to keep him feeling acknowledged and the situation, and not to get on his heightened tenterhooks. And she managed him beautifully and the whole way, and he had nothing, even in that moment, he had nothing but beautiful things to say about her. And she walked us down to the maternity ward with Charlie. We named him Charlie John, after my dad. And I remember you had a cooling mat as well, and a crib, which I believe was donated to the hospital after seeing one of these other labour of love stories. And that was just such a blessing to be able to have him in there with us. And I remember them asking, did we want to help bathing with him? And Ben and I were adamantly, no, we didn't want it. And I think after the trauma of losing him, it's funny how quick sometimes you go into, no, now we just want some moments. And we didn't want anyone in the room with us because, again, I think after Emily, we wanted to be parents. And we wanted to enjoy whatever we had. And I remember bathing him and just taking his whole naked, beautiful body in, and just, you know, looking at each other with love at what we created. And then my mum at that time had arrived. I think this was the wee hours of the morning, because I think he was alive for 123 minutes. Born at 11:07, I think, passed at 1:04. So we're lucky we have a birthday and a death day, which which is kind of good for us in separate days, and the way that we can function with our grief and with celebrating him moving forward. And then my mum came and had her cuddles, and I think everyone after Emily was just couldn't believe that it had happened again. So,
I mean, it was, you can only imagine the effect it had on us. As healthcare professionals, to see you go through one incredible situation with Emily and then with Charlie, just, you know, we're all just so devastated for you. And for us too, you know.
I remember.
And we arranged an autopsy.
Yes.
And what do you understand was found at the autopsy?
I know that there was a blood clot that went from his heart that travelled down to his lungs, hence why he had no problems in the womb, because he's not using his lungs. So only after he came out did that kind of start to showcase itself. And I know that the heart, I think there was like valves that were meant to be like 6 mils that were 9, and the heart that was meant to weigh about 19 grams was about 33 grams. So from that, I think you guys ascertained at about a certain gestation that had started to happen, because you could see the the wear and tear on the heart and those veins that they were working a bit harder.
And so his heart had, in the last about a month or so during the pregnancy, the valves of the heart got blocked.
Yeah.
By an unknown reason.
Yeah, that was the bit we couldn't figure out.
It was really terrible not knowing why.
Yeah.
And so when he came out, he kind of had enough oxygen for a while to just, interact and then he started to lose his oxygen, and all during the resuscitation we just could not get his heart to pump. It's like it was just disconnected.
Yeah.
And there was also a blockage that was just stopping the blood from flowing out of his heart.
Yeah.
And short of having a heart bypass machine, which no one would ever expect to have in this situation.
No.
Just totally out of the blue and cruel.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I just remember you having, you write things down, and you wrote made a little booklet.
Yeah.
For Charlie.
I've got it. Yeah.
And the funeral at your parents' house.
Yeah.
And everyone was there, and it was just, I think I was just numb. I just couldn't believe it. I just was so numb. And, it takes a while to get over something like that.
Yeah, it does.
But somehow we did.
Yep.
And went on to have 2 more babies.
We did.
Who had extensive scans of their hearts in the last few weeks of the pregnancies.
No, I remember, I think Ollie, I've got no memory of his pregnancy because you sent us to the specialist obstetrician, and because at this stage we were like, should we be even going down this family planning path? We knew we wanted to, but 2 was enough. Like a third, we wanted to still be, whatever life was going to bring, we wanted to make sure we could cope with it. So you sent us on, and she turned around and I remember reviewed all our notes for both pregnancies, and she said to me, Claire, I'm here to tell you either if you're a sick mum or if you're going to have sick bubs. And she essentially said, I've read all your notes, you've had healthy pregnancies, your babies have been healthy weights, you've been struck by lightning twice. She said one more like human errors, and second one medical anomaly that we'll never know. She said all I can see for you is that you will have healthy babies from now on, and all I want from you, I remember, is a picture. When, send through Peter a picture. And I was like, okay. And we'd done 19 vials of bloods,
yes,
both
we've
of
done
us.
So much blood tests. And
I had factor V Leiden, which you told me was not the cause for his clot. No. And I have no history even today of any clots, even though you said a quarter of the population kind of walk around with it. And Ben had some weird MTFHR gene, which basically means he doesn't take the folic acid very well, but nothing that would inhibit our family planning.
Correct.
So we fell pregnant 12 weeks after losing Charlie.
Yeah.
And I don't recount much about Oliver at all, except for the extensive scans. Yeah. Emotionally, I think we just focused on Em.
Yeah. You probably had your defences up, your emotional defences up.
And I think we just got to the end of that. And I remember the most beautiful delivery. He went all to plan. He waited for his day. Yeah. We turned up on time. It was like he's my most planned child. We made sure Emily was the first person other than us that got to say hello. My whole family was there, because you can imagine. So all my sisters, my parents who've travelled this journey with us. And I remember after that, when we left the hospital and we put Oliver in a car seat and we looked at each other and we were crying tears of joy, but we were so profoundly affected by, this is what everyone else does. This is the normality of what a process should be. Yeah. And it took us 3 lives. We got that, and then Anna
came along,
and Anna was definitely. We always wanted 3. We'd had 3, but we kept 2. So we were like, no, we're gonna bring it in, and we decided to go and give Emily another sibling because she loved being a big sister, and equally we thought it'd be great for Ollie to have another sibling to play with. And yeah, we were lucky. We've got our beautiful, amazing teacher who's going to teach him so much about life, and she is a phenomenal patient big sister. And then we've got Ollie and we've got Anna, and Anna is my challenge child. Yeah, and I love it to death.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got, it's all worth it.
So, I just want to know how.
Yeah.
So obviously, Oliver and Anna are with their big sister.
Yep.
But they're not with their big brother.
No.
And how does Charlie feature in your life nowadays?
Quite prominently.
Okay.
He's on my wrist.
Okay.
I've got a fingerprint that actually Guardian Funerals were clever enough to, I wouldn't have thought of it, but they did his fingerprint for me, and they gave that to me as part of the process, which was beautiful. My whole family bought us a bench.
Right.
We have his name on. We call Charlie the Rainbow. I know people use the term rainbow, usually Charlie was born alive, but we do it, we've got analogies for all our children. Emily's our sunshine, Charlie's our rainbow because they come into the sky as vibrant, full of life, but they fade quite quickly. And then we've got Oliver's our moon, because he was our first child that goes through phases.
Okay, right.
Because we talk about Emily's a constant, she doesn't get to go through your milestones and things like other kids. But Oliver was our moon, and then Anna came in like a star, our shooting star. So that's how we talk about our children. So they've all got their little symbols, and so obviously when we see a rainbow we say hi to Charlie, and we talk about Charlie being over the rainbow. The other thing that you'll remember from our service story, which I remember calling the fairy wren, was what was on our service booklet.
Right. Yeah.
And we use the fairy wren as a symbol of Charlie. It's a little blue fairy wren, and that's even when we bought our last house, there were fairy wrens there. So of course that was the right house to buy. Like he's ingrained in so much of what we do and how we think, and he will always be a part of it. And I think I remember writing in that service booklet that I loved him before we created him, I loved him while I created him, and I plan to love him when he was here, and I will continue to do so. So that's all you do. You continue to love them, whether they're here or not.
Yeah. Claire, I just can't thank you enough for coming today.
No, look, I appreciate it. It's been quite a journey with you, and we've appreciated so much of having you by our sides. And I remember after Charlie, I didn't want to be under anyone else either, because I knew it was just the way it was, and I knew that you'd be, the best person to travel this journey with us. And I think, it was worth it. You go through it, and at the end, and it was worth it not just for the 2 kids at the end. Emily was worth it, Charlie was worth it, Oliver was worth it, Anna was worth it. So thank you.